Well, since we were just talking about names, I have a unique name too, Gadi. It's Israeli, it's a little different. I'd love to start with names of characters because I'm fascinated by where people find them. How did you find Poppy, Ingrid, Julia, Van? Like, where did some of these names come from? Is there any significance to them? I'm just kind of curious.
I think, Julia is the name of one of my really good friends from high school. The character is not her, but I've always loved that name. Van, I think mostly I kind of have to feel it, like I know the character is, and it takes a bit to find the right name. Poppy, there was a little girl who I met who she had braids and kind of strawberry blonde hair, and her name was Poppy, and her dad called her Pops. And I was like, done. That's exactly, I can see, that's this character. But names are so important. And I remember talking to this author, Jennifer Niven, and she was saying, like, yeah, when it's wrong, and you have to go back.
Speaking of that similar feel, titles are another beast that I know authors and writers go through. I love this Golden State. It's got a couple of meanings, obviously connection to California, but I think of a person in a golden state is also another way to read it. Mm-hmm. But I'm curious, was this an easy title, tough title? Was it a tough one?
That is the toughest title of any of my books. It really, we went back and forth because, it has all these components of DNA and family and Golden, I think I had mentioned Golden State or the Golden State, and then my editor came up with this Golden State, and we were like, that's brilliant, because it's, Poppy's going through this golden state of childhood, of becoming of age, of becoming, her own person, and so double meaning, and my love for California. So
you mentioned DNA. Can you share with us the real life kind of reason why DNA is a part of your story? I think you've shared with it a couple times about a particular person being captured because of DNA.
Yeah, I was thinking about this for the panel I'm going to be on. Of what inspired me was, I think it was 2018, and I read about the Golden State Killer being caught, and it blew my mind, that they had evidence from crime scenes that, went back 20 years, but, they just kept trying to match it to felons and nothing. And then that idea of like, let's use legally, illegally, it's a new frontier of, I was trying to remember what it was in 23andMe, but one of them that then they, took the DNA there and then started matching it and building these, it took a lot of work, like building this family tree. And then, I just kept thinking about how if you want to live off the grid, how it's becoming more and more impossible, and how this is probably something that no one saw coming. So I thought about that idea suddenly of like, okay, what if I love it in movies and books. They always say it's going to be the tiniest thing that gets us caught. Mm-hmm. And in this case, it's like this, of course, tiny thing that...
That's so cool. So I know you went to UCLA and you studied film, and then you got to be, Warner Brothers, Disney. You got to be on lots. You got to see how the things were made, the sausage is made. Yeah. But in connection to your books, I love how visual your books are. How much we get the space and like the park in this one, where we get the kind of the visual sense of where they are. Does that come maybe from being involved in mediums other than, books, like where you do have a film background, you do think visually, I think, maybe? I
hope so, because I do think of all of my books as films in my head. I see it, and that's how, and then I try and get it on paper. So I think, probably. A lot of times I just hope that all those scripts I read over the years, that it somehow got in my brain of just how to tell a story.
So this one is going to be turned into a film, if I'm not mistaken, and you're working on the
Fingers
screenplay.
Crossed, yeah.
What is the process in writing a screenplay compared to writing your novels? Is it similar for you? Is it different?
Oh man, I learned a lot. It's just, it's taught me a lot about how much you have to pare down and how it's a relief to have the visual shortcuts. So instead of saying, building out that park and describing it and making you feel like you're there, you can just say exterior park, done. So it was a relief in some ways, but other ways, I felt like it was turning my brain just 45 degrees into a new craft. Like they're touching, but they're different, and trying to make myself think that way. And that's what I was scared of. Originally, I was like, I don't know, even after reading so many screenplays, I'm not sure I'd be a natural for this. But I did it, so I'm doing it.
When do you write? What's your process?
I do this thing where because I started when I had, my kids were small, so
You're a morning writer.
Oh, early.
Okay.
So I wake up at 5 and I work for, maybe now it's earlier, like I work until 6:30, and that is my best time. That's when it's dark and it's quiet, and I feel like I'm kind of in a cave. And then everybody gets up, and then when they leave, I kind of go back to it. But that early time that's the best.
Wow. How has being a parent impacted your writing and impacted the female characters we've seen in your books?
I think it's part of why I like writing about families, and the last 2 books have had mothers, who, and so I think I like including that. And, the 2 mothers I have in the books, I guess there's some similarities between them, but I think I have more empathy for their good intentions. Like when I'm writing the YA books, I'm first person in the teenagers' point of view, and so I'm on their side. But I think I've tried to build in more complexities with parents. It's also hard, like just the reality of trying to write with the kids, because it's made me efficient. But sometimes it's like I feel like it's a 3-legged race. Yeah.
I'm curious, are you a YA reader, knowing that you're a writer?
I am, yes, and also more adult, I think. Yeah, sometimes it sounds so bad, but it became work after I started writing YA, and I just didn't enjoy it as much. I did when I read it, but it felt like, trying to read the landscape. And so, yeah, sadly, that's my own fault, like letting some of the joy go out of it.
So will there be a jump into adult fiction for you, or any other form?
I think so. I think this Golden State in a lot of ways is kind of a crossover book.
It's definitely more adult themed.
Yeah, and so I think so. I am sort of edging towards that world.
Who do you read? Like, who are you a fan of? It doesn't have to be authors. It can be anything.
I love to read. I love long form articles, but I love, like, I just finished The Marriage Portrait. Yeah. Hamnet is one of my all-time favorites. For books that are young adult, there's a book that I don't think it was categorized as young adult, but it was Tell the Wolves I'm Home.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. That book is just, like, one of my favorites. And I really like E. Lockhart, We Were Liars, and David Levithan, like these books that like every day, like that are weird, but they're grounded in reality, and in a way they touch on multiple genres. I love those. I love the feel of those. So
being in this environment, festivals like David's here, how much do you get interaction with other authors? How much do you pick brains of other authors? Do you try and separate? Like, how do you deal with other writers?
Oh, I love it. It's, I think it takes some extroverting, when you're not used to it, but it's like finding people who understand this very strange thing that you do, and even going to the panels and you hear about people saying, like I forgot who was saying it yesterday, of I think he's written 40 books, and he said, I feel like everyone is my last. Just the anxiety that everyone has, the feeling of the highs and lows, being by yourself. So I think that being able to talk about, do you plot? Do you, or are you more of a character person, or what books are you reading? And you feel like you've met some coworkers.
So you're based here in Austin.
Yeah.
You obviously have California ties, but you also went to school in Maine.
Yeah. It was crazy.
Cross country feel. Where do you consider home?
Oh, it's it's a tough one. I consider California home, but it's not my home anymore. And I think the book is a lot of that heartbreak. And my parents are aging, and the book, This Golden State, that house and that neighborhood, I wanted it to have that 70s California vibe. And I think when I thought about the idea of where I was going to set it, I was at my parents' house for a few weeks that summer, and I was just thinking, like, this is all, their house is such a, still a ranch house in the midst of the Silicon Valley craziness, and it's all going to be gone, I won't always be going back to California for a few weeks. So, yeah, it's a lot of nostalgia, but now I've been here for like 16 years. And I've raised, I've had my kids here. So I'm coming around that Austin's my home.
What do you miss most about California?
I miss the weather. I miss the politics. I miss that feeling of being on a coast. I mean, I know we're, the coast, there's a coast here, but when you can get in the car and you can, for the weekend, you can go to this, beautiful place or that beautiful place, the natural beauty, I would say. And the hill country here is beautiful, but that California beauty, is just, that's where my heart is.
So you're in the midst of converting this to a screenplay. It sounds like you're trying to look into avenues for an adult story. Where are you in your process right now as far as writing and creating?
I keep trying to go to this novel, my next novel that I'm going to write, and I get pulled back to the screenplay. Which I love, this kind of having, it's way more collaborative than writing a novel. And I love the people I'm working with, the producers. But so I'm kind of ready to go into a cave and work on the book I've started very roughly figuring out.
I love the authors at Flatiron. Can you talk about what it's like working with them and why you picked them?
Yeah, I love that they take fewer authors. And my editor, Sarah Barley, I just love her list. And I think that she does what she wants, and they trust her, and they trust, I remember the big boss, I'm trying to remember, it wasn't the publisher, but maybe the executive editor, said, she has one of the best noses in the business. And I was like, okay, I want to sign with her, yeah. So she's great.
So I'm curious, since you are a fan of film, a fan of, that side of, you were there, you got to see how the sausage was made. I'm curious, what are some of shows or movies that you really love and have been kind of maybe connected into your life, or things that stand out?
I mean, right now, for what I want to do next, not that it has any time period relevance, but I can't stop thinking about Mad Men and people who try and reinvent themselves and not let the past catch up with them and not deal with anything. And then what am I loving right now? I'm really moved by the Paul Newman, Joanne Woodward documentary series on HBO.
Ethan Hawke did, yeah.
Oh, I love that so much. I'm an avid TV watcher. I love... I'm trying to think if there's anything that in particular. I mean, I'd say my all-time favorites are the crown jewels of HBO, and. Yeah, I probably watch way too much TV, but I think audiobooks have become my new best friend because I'm just getting books all the time that way and then watch way too much TV at night.
Who would be your ultimate audiobook narrator for your own work?
Oh, I'm trying to think. This is a funny one, but I said the inspiration for the Insomniacs, it was Yoga with Adrienne. I love her voice. So I'm trying to think of I know that I've thought of this before, but yeah, right now I'll stick with Adrienne.
That's awesome. I'd love to know the experience of this festival, what Texas Book Festival means to authors, especially living here in Austin, knowing how much this community really comes out for us. I mean, this is one of the biggest in the country, in the world, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a huge privilege to get into this festival because it is one of the biggest. And having lived here and going to this festival and going into the chamber and hearing these big authors and, this is my fourth book. And so I've tried to get in before. And so I feel like I reached, something I wanted to do. And there's a lot of Texas pride. I think that I went to a panel yesterday that focused on East Texas and just the hospitality, the charm, the Texas themes that are going on through here. I mean, in a way, that was one of the draws of moving here is just there's a lot of Texas pride. So
I'd love to kind of wrap things up by asking, when you look back at your 4 books, what do you feel stands out most? What do you hope audiences have gotten most from your work?
I want them to, my massive goal is to create a character that lives on in people's memory, because when that happens to me and I can't stop thinking about a character as if they're a real person. So that would be my huge goal, hope, is to be able to do that.
And to close out, I have kind of little quick throw fun questions for you. I read that you took Latin in high school, which I did too. What did you remember about Latin class, and did it actually help you in your writing process?
Well, that's really funny because my daughter's taking Latin right now, and she loves it. So it's kind of bringing back all of the translation that I did. But I don't know. I wonder if it helped with languages or writing or... I don't know, possibly. I know it helped in that I was writing a romance novel with my friend in class and we would pass it back and forth.
So cool.
Yeah.
And I also read a really cool thing. There's a connection with your husband and Blockbuster?
Oh, yeah.
Can you share with us that?
Back in the day, yeah, he worked for Blockbuster. So he, and that's actually where we met. I'd met him, but he had dated my friend in college. And so I ran into him there.
So he worked at the Blockbuster? Yeah. Oh, very cool. And then kind of lastly, now that you've lived here 16 years, where in Austin do you feel comfortable? What are some of the spots or places, food that that's your place?
It would be walking across the Greenbelt, south of the river, walking across the Greenbelt and going to Taco Deli. That's the quintessential, my favorite.
What's your go-to taco?
Oh, probably the chicken frontera or the steak frontera.
It's quality, yeah.
They're really good.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Obviously, I'm a fan of your work. I can't wait to see you step into an adult theme. I think you'll kill it.
Thank you.
But thank you for the time. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.